911, where's your emergency?
Yeah, I'm on the beach in Biloxi, and in my apartment, it's coming apart.
Okay.
About 4 foot of water's underneath me. I'm
Okay.
on the second floor.
Right now, there's nothing that we can do as far as coming to rescue you. 911.
Hello? I need help. Try to send help ASAP because we have a lot of people over here.
No emergency personnel can be on the road. Okay? That's why there was a mandatory evacuation.
911.
I'm right on the coastline. My house is filling up with water.
Okay, how deep is it, the water in your house?
The water is up to my kitchen counter.
To your kitchen
My house
counter?
is shaking. It's about ready to come down.
Okay, well, we don't have any emergency personnel out on the roads right now. I can't promise how long it'll be, but as soon as we can get somebody out to you, we will.
Oh, God, man, we're gonna die.
Biloxi Police and Fire.
Well, I just want to let you know that me and Mama are going to die. We're trapped in our house and it's falling apart.
Your house is falling apart?
Yes.
Are y'all in the attic?
Yes. We cannot get to the roof. I know there's too much in here. I just want to let you know.
That's when this trip really gets personal. You actually get down into the neighborhoods and you're walking around, you actually see the devastation. Neighborhoods that once flourished, where people raised their families and children once played. Everything they have, everything they own, all their personal belongings, just thrown everywhere. The cars they drove in, just completely destroyed. Foundations of their houses just gone. Makes you take a step back and just wonder, what was this like? What could this have been like? Then you stop by and you see a house and you realize that this is where they found a dead body. You know, on this trip where we were in Waveland, Mississippi and in New Orleans, this is an area that was known as Ground Zero. Ground Zero in a hurricane, that's where the eye of the storm actually hits. All the destruction hits there, everything, it just ravages everything in its path. It doesn't pick and choose, well, we're gonna hit this building or I'm gonna hit this area. It just hits everything, it just annihilates it. It throws everything it can as far as it possibly can throw it. You step back and you start taking looks and you just realize that, man, how are we gonna do this? This task seems so insurmountable. The hill just seems so high to climb. There's just no way we can take this all in. It just doesn't make sense. It's at this time where you really start to look within yourself and really start to ask yourself some questions. How would I have handled the storm? Knowing that everything I had was gone. That my child would no longer play with their favorite toy. Knowing that I would no longer sit in my favorite place in the house. My neighborhood would be destroyed. My neighbors all gone. My house completely ruined. How would I have handled it? It's at that moment that God steps in. And you realize that no matter how big the storm, Katrina was the biggest storm that ever hit this country. No matter how big, that God is always bigger. When you turn to the New Testament, Jesus shares a parable. It is the parable of the Good Samaritan. The interesting thing is that in the parable of the Good Samaritan, there's a man that's walking down the road to Jericho. He's a Jewish man, and he's traveling from the city of Jerusalem. And the path that he's walking down is a destructive path. It's very rocky, and the path is very narrow. And along that path, a lot of times, there were those that would rob and beat people. This man had no luck that day, and he was robbed. In fact, after they robbed him, they beat him to the point where he was going to die. A priest came along, a quote-unquote religious man, and he saw this man. He saw the destruction. He saw the hurt. He saw that he was beaten and that he was dying. Yet, after seeing this, he chose to go the other way. He chose to go past the destruction. Right after the priest, a Levite, a temple assistant, did the exact same thing. When we walk away from it, though, it doesn't take away the destruction. It's still there. It doesn't just go away. Whatever storm you're facing, whatever storm you have in your life, whatever you feel is just destroying you from within, it doesn't go away until you let God deal with it. And today, for whatever reason, you might be running. It's okay. We've all run. But you get to make a choice. Are you going to run to God, or are you going to continue to run down your own path and not see anything around you? See, the destruction, once again, it doesn't just go away. And the hurt that you're feeling, the fear that you have on the inside, the doubt, the anxiety, it stays there until you decide to face it. Until you decide to work it out with God and realize the foundation that you have is with God. It's at this point of the trip that you realize that you're a team. And that as a team, there's so many things that you can do. Even if that task seems insurmountable and that hill just too high to climb. Every small thing you do, whether it's with a rake, with a shovel, with your hands, whatever it might be, it's all a part. Pulling along a wheelbarrow and emptying it out so the contractors can come by and do their job. Just moment after moment, moments that became God moments. Even as a team, you look at one another and you just realize this is something we have to do. We have to do this. We've got to take the time. We need to take the destruction and take it a piece of a time to help these people, help them to rebuild, help them to gain their life back. And you just feel like it's just never going to end. There's just so much of it. Something happened though. Midway through the trip, I started looking around and people were smiling. They were happy. They were singing praises to God. The guys got together and were singing Amazing Grace. They were singing Amazing Love. People kept working and they kept smiling. So happy for such a team. And to realize that right now, the weather at this time where we are is 95 degrees with 100% humidity. There's a thing they use down there in the weather they call the heat index. And the heat index is how the air feels upon your skin. The heat index where we were, New Orleans and Mississippi at this time, was 103 to 108 degrees every single day. And the jobs that you see, they aren't glamorous. These aren't jobs that you would just normally do. He looked around and the people were smiling. They were so glad to be working for the cause of Christ. So glad to be working together for that cause. That's when you realize that relationships are being built. All of us having the same goals. And these aren't just people that hang out from day to day. Yet there they were, all working for that same cause for Christ. It's so amazing when you work together as a team, you become a family. You work together with Him. There's times when you're laughing, and there's times when it's hard work. But at the end of the day, there's always time when we can pray together as well. Back to the parable of the Good Samaritan. The third person that came along that day just happened to be the Samaritan. And if you look in the background of the Samaritans and the Jews and the Jews hated one another. The Jews felt that they were the chosen race. They were God's chosen people. The Samaritans intermarried into the Jews, and because of that, the Jews felt they were lesser in God's eyes. A Jew would not go out of their way for a Samaritan, and a Samaritan would not go out of their way for a Jew, which is part of the story. See, when we choose to love, it doesn't matter the race. It doesn't matter the color. It doesn't matter the creed. God just wants us to love. He just wants us to show that love to others. And this Samaritan that day, he chose to love. He chose to see that that Jew would be healed. Because when he looked down, he saw someone who was hurting. He looked down and he didn't see a Jew. He just saw someone who needed that love, who was hurting from the inside. He chose to show compassion that day, and he chose to see that that Jew would heal. In fact, at the end of the story, he gives his money just to make sure that that Jew would get better. Taking out the trash and picking up the debris, tearing down walls, it's not glamorous. It's not something that you would think would show God's love, would help people heal. But suddenly, you could see it. We met a family on the trip, and as we talked with this family, we found they had actually lost their house 4 times. This was the 4th time that everything they had was completely destroyed. They had left Mississippi and were in Pensacola, Florida, and they could have just stayed away, but they decided after a month and a half to come back. When they came back, sure enough, their house was completely destroyed. Their entire house had been pushed into their tool shed. So they emptied their entire tool shed, they took the remaining wood, and they made some makeshift walls. And this family of 4 now lives in a house 15 feet by 18 feet. Plywood floors, plywood walls, plywood everywhere. But they chose to come back, and we asked them why. Why would you come back to all of this devastation? They came back, they said, because they knew they could help. They knew that Katrina meant cleansing, and they felt God had cleansed this area. And they knew that if they came back and they showed and they shared their faith and helped out and just loved others, that they could make a difference. For 5 months they woke up to the smell of death, just stinging their noses. But slowly, the area was becoming cleansed. And they knew that the faith that they were showing, their faith in God, was being shared and that others were seeing it. So whether it's at the end of the day and you're striking a pose, you're carrying a princess to her throne, it was amazing how you actually found time to laugh. And you found time just to be with God. You found a time to find a special place to read. Or you found a special buddy that you could read with. You found time to meet people and to hear their stories of coming through this wreckage. But most of all, you found time to become a team, and you found time to grow as a family. And especially at the end of the day, you found time to hold hands, to stand in a circle, and thank God and pray, and thank Him for the many things that He did that day. You know, there are so many of us right now that are facing a task that we think we just can't overcome. We're facing a storm in our life that just seems insurmountable. But you know, if you take it a brick at a time, a piece of wood at a time, or a piece of debris at a time, and you do it with God, it's amazing what you can accomplish. You take a look back and you think, wow, God really had his hand in all of this. And you thank him for it. And of course, as a team, you should always take time to pray. So today I'm going to ask you some questions. What storm are you facing? Which direction are you running? Are you running away from God and running away from his peace and protection, the foundation of your faith? Are you thinking about all the storms that you have and the hills that you need to climb, and you're trying to do it on your own? Yet God's right there saying, I'm here to love you, I'm here to care for you. The destruction may seem unbelievable, and the hurt, the fear, the doubt, it may seem like you just can't get through it. But with God, with that foundation in fellowship with him, with that faith, there's nothing, no storm that you can't overcome. Today as we end, we each have a choice. We each have a choice when we are going to come to a God moment, a time where we can stop and choose to love and to show God's love, or to be like the priest and the Levite from the temple and to choose to just walk the other way, to walk across the road and to continue to go down our own path.